So I drive a 1954 Dodge. So it's a custom, it's purple, sparkles, it's beautiful.
I got what you need.
The Dodge has played such a huge role in our whole lives. My husband and I drove it on our first date. We drove it in our wedding, drove it on our honeymoon through the States. We brought Ben home from the hospital in it. You know, we attached the car seat clips in the back, and yeah, so it's been a huge, like, sort of that stable reminder through our whole relationships of kind of where we started from, and you know, we'll keep it forever. I think that there is like a bit of that culture like undertone in Cambridge. And I don't know if it's maybe because it is a little bit of a blue collar town. Some people, maybe they're mechanics or car people and they do that for a living and they can do this stuff themselves. Well, I love everything about like the hot rod culture, you know. I love the music, I love the way they look. Just love, you know, the pinup girls, they look amazing, and the guys are dressed the part, and that's how they dress every day, you know. They don't just put it on for the shows, like it's a lifestyle. Like a typical Friday night here in the summer, we'll have, you know, 8 or 10 car guys come over. Our whole front lawn will be covered in cars, which our neighbors love, let me tell you. And that's just normal to my son. I think it's really creating that, you know, something important in him, and that it's important to work on something, to build it yourself, to have pride and ownership, and to have that sense of community with the car guys.
Why do we get married for life?
Well, you hope that the other person also changes in the same direction every 7 years, right? Brandon and I have done that. I think we've had our woo, but we've kind of ended up on the same path, so that's good. Growing up, I like lived at church. You know, we were there twice on Sundays and Wednesdays, and yeah, Baptist, you know, sort of semi-rigid upbringing, which also may account for some of the rebellion in the later teenage years. I could drive one. They just could put hand controls. It's like kind of like a motorcycle. I was a party girl in high school. Yeah, I did very well considering, like my grade 9 year, oh, my parents still, you know, shake their heads at this, but I missed 185 classes because of skipping, and I still made the honor roll. So they were like, if only you know, things weren't so easy for me.
Then they catch a fish and they say, "Here, Grandpa, or Pop."
Take the fish off the hook.
No, they,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, if you and I are fishing together, we're both able to bait our own hooks. And my dad also worked for the police department, so I think that he wasn't a police officer; he was a civilian. But I think that was like a source of embarrassment for him too. When, you know, there's a couple times when I got brought home by the police and stuff, and here's my poor dad. Like, that's his job. And looking back on it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I would humiliate him like that. But I think, you know, I was just going through so much myself and trying to figure out my own path. And I guess I thought that was the best way to do it. So I was 18 at the time, living with my sister. It never occurred to me that something bad was gonna happen to me that night. We had like a little Hyundai Tiburon. It's just a little 4-seater car, but there was 7 of us. So we were trying to figure out how we can, you know, jam in that car. So I actually ended up sitting on the seat of someone's lap in the back seat. And the front wheels of the car got caught up in the gravel on the side of the road because he had kind of changed the lane. And the car started flipping, and I was ejected out the back window of the car on one of those flips. Most serious and permanent injury, obviously, was a complete spinal cord injury at the T4 level, which essentially meant I had no movement or sensation from the chest down. Everyone else is pretty much okay. You know, they all had minor injuries. A lot of times one person, they say, and they don't know why, takes the kind of the brunt of it, and unfortunately that was me. The guy whose lap I was sitting on, he flew out the window with me as well, but he actually landed on me, so I kind of saved his ass. But because of some of the stuff I had dealt with growing up, and because of sort of the resilient manner that my mom had raised us to live in, I think that I just dealt with it actually so well that they thought that I had sustained like a really bad head injury or something. They kept sending me for like psychological testing. In fact, when I woke up in the ICU, my mom said that the first thing I said was, well, what now? There's a lot more to it than I just can't walk. And I think that that's something I think is really important for people to understand. So I have, circulation problems, breathing issues, bladder management, bowel management, skin issues. Like there's this whole umbrella of issues that a spinal cord injury really brings you. So I spent 6 months in rehab basically learning how to use my body over again. I'm 5'9", so I got these crazy long legs, which are no longer the asset they once were. They're kind of a pain. And having to figure out how to do it all with just, this part of my body. Because I went from being this tall, blonde girl that could like turn heads and, kind of had my looks going for me, and I used that a lot for attention, and suddenly it was very different. I was turning heads for a very different reason now. I'd only been injured for a year and a bit when we met. He actually was standing behind me at the bar, and I reached up and grabbed a beer, and then I spun around and like elbowed him. And then he kind of like was like, whoa. And then he's like, oh, hey. He never made it about me being in a chair. It was never that. It was just, he was dating, this blonde girl. Oh, she happens to be in a wheelchair. I love you. I think that one thing that I've kept very separate is like the healthcare stuff and the relationship stuff. Because I also want to be seen as a sexual being to my husband. I don't want him thinking about some of the bathroom stuff that I have going on. Like, that's not what I want him to be thinking about when we're trying to like make out. So
Do the loop, we'll go by the library and then come back down, okay?
being pregnant was an adventure. So I only was able to work for the first 2 months, and then started passing out at work, which they frown upon at the bank. So I had to go home and lay down. And I laid on this couch and watched the world go by through this window for 6 months. Even as a very small infant, it's almost like he knew that he had to do certain things differently.
All right, backpack. No, your purse back.
He would just sit on my lap on like a breastfeeding pillow, and I could wheel around the house with him, and he would just sit there. It was amazing. So yeah, he's always been a pretty special kid. For a long time, people would tell Brandon like he was going to heaven because he married me, and what a great guy you are. You married a woman in a wheelchair and all that kind of stuff. And he'd be like, are you kidding me? Like, she does everything. Like, I'm lucky to have her.
Are you the mayor?
I am.
You know what it's best in here?
I just work part-time for some friends in their business, doing some administrative work, bookkeeping, things like that. But that's only a couple days a week. So the rest of my time is filled up with some volunteer work that I do. I'm the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee for the City of Cambridge. So I think that it's our responsibility to be complying with the ADA. It's also a legal duty under the Human Rights Code to prevent ableism. On top of that, I also run Stopgap Cambridge. We have these beautiful little portable ramps that we custom build for businesses that have one step up front entrances to remove that barrier for people with using mobility devices. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is changing people's mindsets on what you can and cannot do, or what you should and shouldn't do, kind of thing. Ramp delivery.
Ramp delivery, yes.
I remember when I was pregnant, I had people saying, well, how are you going to take care of your child? And, what if he runs away? I'm like, don't you think I get stressed about that every second of my pregnancy? The best was the idiot people who thought he was going to be in a wheelchair because I'm in a wheelchair. They were like, what are you going to do when you have a child in a wheelchair? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if I'd lost my arm in a car crash, would my child be born with one arm? People legitimately thought that. And it was very hilarious, to the point I'm like, how do you function? where I would be if I hadn't had my injury. I mean, I was heading down such a crazy path. And my mom says I was like on this merry-go-round just spinning and spinning. And she says, eventually you just had to fly off. She said, you actually literally flew off. She's like, I don't recommend that for everyone. But she said, you know, the changes that have come in your life since your injury are remarkable. I would love to just be able to live my life as easy as I did prior to my injury. And I know that that's a long way off. Like, I definitely have to plan ahead now, and I have to be more proactive in that stuff, and I do have to deal with things on a daily basis, but I'd love to see us heading in that direction where I don't necessarily have to call ahead to a restaurant and say, hey, can I use your bathroom? Like, am I gonna be able to get to it if I come for dinner? I'd love to just be able to go out with my family and live the life that I wanna live.
I got what you need.
I remember when I was in the rehab hospital, this lady came in and she was a hypnosis therapist. And I said, I really wanted to remember sort of what happened all around me. And she said, no, your body's blocked that out for a reason. And I think that that's why I'm able to drive, why I'm able to love cars like I do, because it isn't like, the car attachment isn't really what caused my injury. It was my own stupid choice, right?
Hi, Sean. How are ya? Good, thanks. Thank you.
But when I'm driving the hot rod, nobody ever asks me about being in a wheelchair. It's because all the focus is then on like the purple car. So as much as I'm getting attention, it's the kind of attention I like, because it's about something other than me being a woman with a disability.